Some roads in the world were never built for comfort, but for journeys that demand courage and precision. They wind through towering mountains, cling to sheer cliffs, and cut across narrow valleys where the terrain controls every movement. Sharp hairpin turns, relentless climbs, and narrow lanes force drivers to maintain near-perfect control at every moment. Extreme weather, dense fog, and sudden floodwaters rushing across the road can turn an ordinary drive into a dangerous test. This is a journey across the world's most dangerous roads, where every kilometer challenges the skill and composure of the driver. Lysebotn Road, Norway. From above, Lysebotn Road looks like a giant rope twisted tightly along a mountain wall, forming one of the most dramatic and challenging roads on Earth. The road drops suddenly from about 3,058 feet down to sea level within a surprisingly short distance. To overcome the vertical cliffs, engineers designed exactly 27 sharp hairpin turns that twist like a ribbon tied in knots. The average gradient is around 10%, but the tight curves constantly shift a vehicle's balance and push braking systems to their limits. The surrounding cliffs are also famous worldwide as a prime base jumping location because of their impressive vertical height. Lysebotn Road proves that humans can carve a path even in places that once seemed reachable only by eagles. Col de l'Isère, France. Rising through snow and grey stone, at nearly 9,100 feet, this pass feels like a black blade suspended over the Alps, where even the thin air alone can turn the journey into a harsh test. Since 1938, it has belonged to the legend of the Tour de France, where the greatest riders have had to empty their lungs and legs to reach an altitude where the air itself begins to fight the body. The higher it climbs, the more the green world disappears, giving way to grey rock, permanent ice, and streams of meltwater cutting down from the steep mountain walls. In early summer, the road often opens between snow walls, rising to about 33 feet, turning the whole pass into a surreal frozen corridor in the Alps. At the summit, a small chapel built from local stone blends into the mountain like the final mark of the journey, reminding you that this place is not only beautiful, but also cold, high, and unforgiving. Ruta Cheese, Argentina. This is the motor corridor that carries people toward the southern limit of the Earth, where the feeling of the end of the world appears right on the road. It is also the official ending point of the Pan-American Highway, a massive route that begins in Alaska and closes here among cold wind, grey rock, and dark southern water. The wind here is so strong that trees cannot grow upright, and their trunks and crowns are bent flat in one direction like living flags stretched across the ground. Along both sides of the road lie red-brown peat bogs and dark, wet old-growth forests, where rotting trunks hang with beard-like lichen and create a landscape that feels cold, ancient, and wild. But this route is not continuous because vehicles must stop and board a ferry to cross a strait more than 2 miles wide, where violent waves make the journey feel as if nature itself is blocking the way. At the end, grey mountain ranges do not slope gently away, but plunge straight into black water, while summer can bring up to 17 hours of light each day, and winter sinks the road into darkness for almost the same length of time. BAM Road, Russia, is a true survival exam, where the idea of a road often exists only on paper, and every mile can turn into a risk. About 90% of the route lies on permafrost, and summer thaw can turn the surface into deep, unpredictable mud. Temperatures can swing from about 86 degrees Fahrenheit in summer down to about minus 76 degrees Fahrenheit in winter, which can break equipment if preparation is weak. The route crosses hundreds of rivers and streams, and meltwater can raise water levels by about 3 to 7 feet within hours, turning shallow crossings into deadly traps. Many sections still lack detailed geological maps, so each stretch is closer to exploration than normal driving. One well-known bridge runs more than 1,640 feet on a narrow wooden deck, and some days a professional convoy moves only about 12 to 19 miles while reinforcing bridges or waiting for rivers to drop as isolation and shaking crossings wear down even tough drivers. Transalpina, Romania. Stretching across the mighty Carpathians, Transalpina is a ribbon of asphalt that carries vehicles straight onto the mountain ridges, where driving feels like leaving the ground and entering the sky. Once it rises above the tree line, the dense forest almost disappears at once, giving way to broken rock, bare alpine ground, and high meadows reaching all the way to the horizon. What makes it special is that the road was laid directly along the mountain crests, keeping vehicles near the highest possible line and opening wide views on both sides with almost nothing to block them. Because it climbs so high, some sections rise above the low cloud layer and create the surreal feeling of driving across a white ocean of cloud that hides the world below. The lack of guardrails and the long, sweeping curves along the summit turn this road into a risky, high-speed zone, where one mistake in a corner can throw a vehicle straight toward the abyss. The first foundations of this route are believed to date back nearly 2,000 years, when Roman legions opened a strategic path through the mountains, leaving behind a road that still feels ancient and fierce today. Bealach na Bar, Scotland. Bealach na Bar is the Highland driving legend, a narrow ribbon of road twisting through ancient rock. Some sections climb to around 20%, a 1 in 5 grade, meaning you gain about 3 feet for every 16 feet forward, pushing engines, brakes, and gears hard. The landscape around it was carved by glaciers from the last ice age, leaving deep-cut bowls and cliff walls that feel like stone fortresses. For much of the route, the road is only one lane, with tight passing places that demand confident reversing and careful courtesy. Higher up, trees vanish, and the view turns to moss and grey rock, making it feel like driving across a cold moon. Finishing Bealach Naba becomes an unofficial certificate of skill, proving you can manage speed, braking, and space when the margin for error is thin. Gorge du Verdon, France. In southeastern France, Gorge du Verdon looks like a massive cut carved straight into the earth, revealing a landscape that feels almost unreal. Its fame comes from the river's bright turquoise water glowing at the canyon floor against pale limestone walls. The gorge drops to about 2,300 feet deep, making every viewpoint feel intensely vertical. This giant line stretches for about 16 miles, winding like a green dragon through stone. Driving along the rim can feel frightening for anyone who fears heights, because many sections lack solid guardrails. Stone balconies jut outward so you can hover above the abyss, a place shaped over millions of years by erosion, moving only a few millimeters per century. Passo San Boldo, Italy. Passo San Boldo is known as the Road of 100 Days, a bold engineering route carved through steep mountain walls in northern Italy. To overcome tight space and vertical terrain, engineers built 5 spiral tunnels, drilled directly into solid rock. The elevation changes rapidly, within just a few hundred feet of horizontal distance, making drivers feel like their vehicle is climbing stairs. Sharp hairpin turns sit inside dark tunnels where headlights sweep across rock walls, creating a tense and dramatic atmosphere. Each tunnel exit reveals a completely new valley view, like turning the pages of a giant photo book. Sprengisandur/Route F26, Iceland. Cutting through the dead heart of Iceland, Sprengisandur is the road that carries drivers across the country's most desolate central highlands, where north and south are linked by little more than a lonely strip of gravel in an almost empty world. Stretching about 124 miles, it is one of Iceland's longest and hardest interior crossings, a thin, grey track fragile enough to be blurred away by wind and black volcanic sand. Its most dangerous feature is that several meltwater rivers cut straight across the road with no bridges at all, forcing drivers to judge the depth and current for themselves, where one small mistake can leave a vehicle stranded or swept away. On both sides, there is almost no vegetation, only plains of black sand, volcanic ash, and broken stone running to the horizon, making the landscape feel closer to the surface of the moon than to an earthly road. The visual force becomes even stronger because the route runs between two massive permanent ice fields where distant white glaciers hang against the horizon in violent contrast with the black desert below. Even the name Sprengisandur carries old desperation, because it recalls how riders once had to drive their horses to exhaustion to cross this waterless, grassless desert before death could catch them. Cuesta de Lipan, Argentina. Like a thread of concrete thrown across the burning slopes of the Andes, this pass coils through the air with a beauty so overwhelming that every turn feels like a test of nerve. Before the paved road existed, this was the only trail used by highland tribes to carry salt and wool down into the valleys for trade. Along that climb, the road gains nearly 6,500 feet to reach about 13,681 feet, so each chain of hairpin turns feels like a pull into thinner air. The higher it rises, the more the mountains shift in color under the intense sun, from baked earth tones and deep reds to pale yellows and violets, while the slopes fall away into open depth below. In the middle of that dry highland world, vicuñas often appear beside the road and walk calmly through the barren plateau as if the altitude belongs to them. At the top, the view opens toward the White Plateau and the layered mountains beyond, turning this route into one of the most dramatic and demanding drives in South America. Mount Blue Sky Scenic Byway, USA. Gliding along the highest paved road on the continent, this route surges toward about 14,130 feet, as if it is trying to lift the vehicle off the earth, turning every bend into one more step toward the edge of the sky. Along the way, ancient bristlecone pines with twisted and strange-looking trunks still cling to this harsh elevation, and some of them have survived for at least 2,000 years. Once the road rises fully above the vegetation line, the landscape becomes almost nothing but cold gray stone and tiny alpine wildflowers that bloom brightly for only a few short weeks each year. On both sides stand massive granite monoliths, thousands of feet high, carved by ancient glaciers into walls that feel nearly vertical. What feels strange is how fearless the wildlife is, with mountain goats and bighorn sheep often standing right beside the road or calmly walking across the pavement, as if the altitude belongs to them. Since 2023, this place has officially carried the name Mount Blue Sky, and that renaming is not only a geographic change, but also an effort to help heal historical wounds tied to indigenous tribes. Gorge, Switzerland. Hidden between sheer granite walls like a death gate in the Alps, this gorge once choked the flow of trade across Europe for centuries. At the bottom of the gorge, a glacial river crashes constantly against the rock, creating a deafening roar amplified by the narrow space. The history of opening a route here is a story of sweat and blood, moving from cliff-hugging paths to stone bridges and then to tunnels drilled through the mountain core. The strangest sight is that in a single view, you can see traces of the old road, a dark 19th century stone arch bridge, and modern transport structures layered over each other in mid-air like different ages pressed into one mountain slit. The modern route clings to the mountainside through a chain of half-open galleries drilled directly into the rock to escape the threat of devastating rockfalls. Cut directly into the vertical granite face is a giant memorial cross about 39 feet high, reminding visitors that this place is not only an engineering triumph, but also a landscape that swallowed many lives. Kehlsteinstrasse, Germany. This is one of the most extreme transport works in Europe, marked by both brutal engineering and dark history, a strip of road that tears straight up the Alps as if daring the mountain's own slope. It consumed about 30 million Reichsmarks, worth more than $150 million today, just to open a route to a mountain retreat prepared as a birthday gift for the leader of the Third Reich. Along the cliff edge, the retaining walls were not poured in concrete, but hand-built from massive stone blocks, while the entire route uses only one hairpin turn and cuts through 5 rock tunnels with a total length of about 909 feet. Instead of reaching the summit itself, the route ends suddenly inside a mountain tunnel, where a solid brass-clad elevator shoots another 407 feet upward. Because the descent is so dangerously steep, private cars have been completely banned since 1952, and only specially equipped buses are allowed to operate on the road. Öxi Pass/Route 939, Iceland. Threading between cliff walls and deep drop-offs, this gravel pass feels like a blade hanging in the air, where a single slip of the steering wheel can turn a short route into a very costly one. The surface is mostly compacted dirt and loose gravel, and many sections are so narrow that only one vehicle can pass, hanging above deep drops with no guardrails to forgive a mistake. There are no trees at all, only cracked black volcanic rock and faded green Arctic moss, giving the landscape the feel of a world drained of warmth and life. The most haunting part is the chain of waterfalls crashing from the cliffs right beside the tires, making the entire mountainside feel like a giant drainage machine in motion. From above, the valley looks like a huge V-shaped scar carved by ancient glaciers, while every water crossing is reduced to a narrow steel bridge where vehicles from opposite directions must yield to each other. Vršić Pass, Slovenia. Between the sheer limestone walls of the Julian Alps, this pass appears like a cold wound cut into the mountain, where majestic beauty always comes with danger and a deeply tragic history. Along the route, sharp, gray-white limestone peaks crowd tightly around the pass, clashing hard with the dark green pine forest below and creating an intensely dramatic landscape. With 50 hairpin bends marked by green numbered signs and 24 on the northern side still paved with old cobblestones, every turn feels like driving across history itself. On the opposite mountain face, erosion has shaped a giant woman's face tied to the legend of the heathen maiden, a haunting image fixed in the memory of this whole region. Higher above, nature also carved a stone window about 164 feet high, allowing light to break through like a cold beam falling into the valley at certain times of day. Behind that beauty lies a very dark past. The road was built by 10,000 Russian prisoners of war, and then an avalanche in 1916 buried more than 300 of them, leaving behind a small wooden Orthodox chapel as a memorial beside the road. Todra Gorge, Morocco. Todra Gorge appears like a giant slash cut into the heart of the High Atlas, where limestone walls rise as high as about 1,312 feet, while the floor below feels strangely flat. In some sections, the gap narrows to only about 33 feet, making people look tiny and almost swallowed between the two towering rock faces. The view creates a powerful visual shock, with dry orange stone blazing above, while a green ribbon of palms and riverside plants runs along the bottom of the gorge. Flowing along the base is the Todra River, the patient architect that carved through the limestone for millions of years to create this immense landscape. The walls are so smooth and sheer that they seem machine-polished, which is why this place has also become one of the world's top limestone climbing destinations, with more than 300 established routes. Titsi Entichka is known as the Roof of North Africa, a dramatic mountain gateway leading deep into the heart of Morocco. The pass crosses the massive Atlas Mountains and rises to about 7,415 feet above sea level, making it the highest road pass in the region. At this altitude, the air becomes thin enough that vehicle engines often struggle for oxygen while climbing. In less than 2 hours of driving, temperatures can drop from around 95 degrees Fahrenheit at the base to about 41 degrees at the summit. The road twists through endless hairpin bends where drivers can sometimes see their own vehicle far below on the previous turn. Some sections run beside cliffs more than 1,640 feet deep with almost no guardrails, while powerful winds rushing through the mountains make the journey even more demanding. Haleakala Highway, USA. From the humid edge of the sea, this road charges straight up a sleeping volcano as if tearing through the atmosphere, throwing drivers from the tropical world to more than 10,000 feet in less than 37 miles. Along that short climb, the landscape cuts through 6 of the Earth's 14 climate zones, shifting from humid tropical ground into a dry alpine desert above the clouds. The pavement grips the mountain through repeated hairpin turns and blind curves, making the drive feel like a violent twist upward out of sea level and into another layer of air. Across the volcanic ash stand scattered silver swords, metallic-looking plants that may wait decades to bloom once before they die. At the end, the route opens onto a giant volcanic depression about 7 miles long, 2 miles wide, and nearly 2,600 feet deep, making the whole scene look like the surface of a torn open moon. Mount Washington Auto Road, USA. Opened in 1861. This is the oldest man-made tourist attraction in the United States, a short mountain road that still turns the climb itself into the main event. The whole route is only about 8 miles long, but its average grade is about 12%, and its steepest stretch reaches about 22%, enough to push engines and brakes toward their limit. As the road climbs, dense forest thins out and then disappears, giving way to alpine tundra of moss, broken rock, and plant life more like the Arctic than the rest of New England. The summit it reaches once recorded a wind speed of 231 miles per hour in 1934, a world record at the time that still stands as the highest measured at a staffed weather station. Ruyi Bridge stands out for its interwoven three-lane structure inspired by the shape of the Ruyi scepter, creating a rare and complex form in modern pedestrian bridge design. From a distance, the sweeping steel lines resemble a giant DNA strand or a ribbon suspended above the valley, giving the structure a detached appearance from the ground below. Although it opened only in late 2020, the bridge quickly attracted large numbers of visitors eager to experience its unusual configuration. At the intersection of its branches, the lowest level is paved entirely with transparent, reinforced glass, allowing a direct view into a drop of several hundred feet. Under humid fog or after rainfall, the glass deck becomes slippery, requiring slow and careful movement to maintain balance. Huangchuan Glass Bridge is recognized as the longest glass bridge in the world, measuring about 1,726 feet across a karst gorge in Guangdong. Although the deck is entirely transparent, it was engineered for heavy loads, and during its opening ceremony, two sport utility vehicles weighing about 4 tons drove across the glass without causing damage. The main cables and towers are painted bright red, creating a strong visual contrast against the dark green vegetation clinging to limestone cliffs. The fully transparent deck can induce spatial disorientation, and some visitors experience sensations of free fall that may trigger panic reactions. Baklung Glass Bridge is recognized as the longest cliffside glass-bottom walkway in the world, extending along a limestone mountain in Mokchao. One section of the deck incorporates sound and visual effects that simulate cracking glass beneath each step, often startling visitors despite knowing it is artificial. On days of dense fog or low clouds, the transparent surface blends into the white background, creating the illusion that the bridge disappears into mid-air and making each step cautious. Although it appears slender, the multi-layer glass can support loads comparable to hundreds of cars, yet management limits access to about 500 people at one time for safety. At night, integrated LED lighting along the sides illuminates the structure, causing the bridge to stand out vividly against the dark mountain landscape. Astoria Megla Bridge is the longest continuous steel truss bridge in North America, extending more than 4 miles across the mouth of the Columbia River between Oregon and Washington. The structure uses about 42,000 tons of steel, yet is engineered to flex under winds reaching roughly 150 miles per hour from the Pacific Ocean without structural failure. Its completion linked the final segment of US Route 101, forming a continuous highway corridor along the west coast from the Canadian border to Mexico. To withstand strong river currents, the deepest pier was drilled more than 160 feet into the riverbed, deeper than the height of a 15-story building. Although it has no pedestrian lane for most of the year, the annual Great Columbia Crossing in October temporarily closes traffic and allows people to walk or run the full span. The entire bridge is painted a single shade of green to blend with surrounding forests, and the coating requires constant maintenance to resist salt air corrosion. Hoover Dam Bypass Bridge is the highest concrete arch bridge in the world, spanning Black Canyon at about 885 feet above the Colorado River. Its single concrete arch extends 1,060 feet and was built outward from both canyon walls, meeting with a gap of less than about 3/8 of an inch before being locked into place. During construction, a cable system stretched across the canyon lifted and positioned concrete sections weighing up to 50 tons in midair. The bridge was designed specifically to eliminate the narrow and dangerous hairpin turns that once crossed the top of the original Hoover Dam, reducing congestion and collision risk. Because of extreme desert temperature swings, invisible black ice can form on the deck in winter, creating hazardous driving conditions. Although it overlooks one of the most dramatic canyons in the United States, high solid barriers prevent drivers from stopping to view the dam, ensuring continuous and safer traffic flow. Clifton Suspension Bridge once held the grim record as the site with the highest suicide rate in England, leading authorities to install 7-foot-high barbed steel fencing along the pedestrian walkways. This more than 160-year-old suspension bridge still carries daily vehicle traffic, and its aging chain and anchorage system must support thousands of vehicles above a 246-foot gorge, creating intense structural pressure. To manage risk, the bridge enforces a strict 4-ton vehicle limit, and automatic barriers will drop immediately if weight is exceeded or concentrated too closely near the cliff edge. Below, the River Avon experiences tidal changes of up to about 49 feet, transforming the landscape from deep rushing water to exposed mudflats within hours. The bridge also witnessed the first modern bungee jump in 1979, performed by members of the Dangerous Sports Club from a height of about 246 feet. At night, carefully calibrated LED lighting avoids shining into the gorge to protect rare horseshoe bats, while the massive supporting chains were originally second-hand materials acquired from another dismantled London bridge after Brunel's death. Pont de Normandie stands at the mouth of the Seine River, where crosswinds can reach about 112 miles per hour, arriving in sudden gusts capable of destabilizing light vehicles. The bridge rises at a gradient of about 6%, and from a distance, its steep arch resembles a roller coaster track rather than a coastal highway. Its two inverted Y-shaped pylons reach about 702 feet in height and weigh more than 20,000 tons each, supporting a system of 184 stay cables that can be replaced section by section. The foundations are cast as massive monolithic blocks anchored deep into the riverbed to withstand potential collisions from cargo ships weighing tens of thousands of tons. From the highest point, the Seine estuary reveals a sharp contrast between an active industrial port on one side and wide natural mudflats extending toward the ocean on the other. While motor vehicles pay tolls to cross, pedestrians and cyclists use a dedicated lane free of charge, creating a distinct difference in access across the span. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . Ticlio Pass, Abra Anticona, Peru. Perched high on the Andes, Ticlio Pass feels hard to breathe at first sight because it sits near the sky and looks brutally cold and sharp. The pass stands at about 15,807 feet above sea level, once the highest point in the world on a railway route and still among the highest paved roads on Earth. Building a way through this extreme altitude cost the lives of thousands of workers due to accidents, altitude sickness, and harsh working conditions. Dark grey cliffs rise hard against snowy peaks and icy blue water, making the landscape feel both beautiful and unforgiving. Here, the oxygen level is only about 50% of sea level, forcing the heart to beat much faster just to keep the body going. Crossing Ticlio is not only a journey, but a rite of passage for anyone who wants to understand the true depth of Peru.